All right. Welcome to Community Development's Learning Lab. Our presentation today is Dog and Cat Preventative Care and Licensing, presented by Program Manager William Oglesby. Please put your phones on silent. Save your questions for the end, where we'll have a Q&A session. CVTV is recording this lab, and it will be available on CVTV and on our website.
All right, can you hear me? Can you hear me? How about now? 420 came in. Is it the red button? Can you hear me now? Yes. All right, guess I'm standing in one spot. Okay. Technical difficulties. Technical difficulties.
Can you go to presentation? No, I don't thank you. What happened? Oh, okay. There we go. Of course, it has to happen today. We're good.
All right. Couple technical issues. Welcome to technology. All right. Today we are going to cover the basics of dog and cat preventative care and why licensing is important for your pet. When we talk about preventative care, some of the things we think about are quality of life for you and your pet, longevity of your pet, and the health and wellness, just the overall feeling that we get with your pet, okay? There are many factors that play into all three of those. The environment is probably the biggest one. When we are out in the environment walking our pets along the streets, along roads near, say, Vancouver Lake, in playgrounds, or just out in muddy areas, they are going to get exposure to diseases, and many of those diseases we actively vaccinate for, okay? When we talk about vaccines, there are agencies and government agencies that set these standards, okay? For vaccines for your dog and cat, the AVMA sets the standard. The AVMA is also the organization that accredits the vet schools here in the United States. So most veterinarians are going to follow AVMA standards, okay? There's a little bit of push and pull on what some vets do and some vets don't. And the reason that is you've got older vets who have learned a certain way, have done a certain thing since the dawn of time. And then you've got new vets that have learned it completely different. And they've got new science behind it and things like that. So there's a little bit of give and pull, which is why we always say follow the advice of your veterinarian. When we're looking at standard sets, we're also looking at American Animal Hospital Association. So that's an association standard for veterinary hospitals. They generally follow the AVMA standards for vaccines. Sometimes there's a variant, but they generally stay really close to that. And then we're looking at shelters, so animal shelters. They follow ASV guidelines. And there's a different vaccine protocol within the shelter systems because of the nature of the animals coming in, okay? And then for laws and codes, the standards are set by Clark County Code, the Revised Code of Washington, and the Washington Administrative Code. Preventative care covers vaccines for your dog and cat, as well as parasite treatment, okay, and prevention. Annual veterinary visits. I mean, ideally your pet should go to the vet more than once a year, but once a year is the bare minimum your pet should be going to the vet. Okay, you've got to set that standard so that your vet knows the history of your pet. Too many three-letter words. And then also proper nutrition is important because if we don't feed our pets properly, their health is going to drop. Their immune system is going to get suppressed, and then we're going to have issues with our pets. Okay. Now, with nutrition, you're going to have people tell you this food is the best. This brand is the best. This type is the best. Really, what's best is your pet healthy? When you take your pet to the vet, does their blood work look okay? Is their physical exam good? Is their body score okay? If all of that is within a good normal limit process for your veterinarian, you feed whatever it is you're feeding. Okay? People are going to tell you don't buy the food at the grocery store. It's terrible for your pet. My mom fed our dogs pedigree my entire life. Our pets were very healthy. So if people try and tell you pick a better food, it's okay to take that education process. Choose what's best for your pet. Okay? Exercise and enrichment for your pet is important because it helps you have the same process of exercise and enrichment. So if you live in an apartment and you're going to walk your dog twice a day, you're getting the same steps your dog's in. Okay? So it is going to help your quality of life to take your pet out and walk them. Now, if you don't have a dog and you have a cat, maybe you go get an animal stroller and push them around in the animal stroller. I'm okay with that. Or one of those cat backpacks with the bubble on the back. Those are kind of cool too. I want one. I have a 3-legged cat and she needs it. All right. For the vaccines for dogs, generally speaking, most people are going to refer to this as distemper parvo vaccine or just generally the parvo vaccine. What they're really referring to is what's referred to as DA2PP, DHPP, or DAPPL. Okay? The differences between those two is that A2 stands for adenovirus 2, which is what causes hepatitis, which is the H in the second one. Okay, so more commonly, you're just going to see DAPP at this point. The L stands for leptospirosis, which in many cases is an optional vaccine, but it is also part of a group vaccine like this. Distemper is what the D stands for. So that is spread through direct contact. It can also be spread through the air, which is why when you see animal shelters in the news, and they're like, oh, they had a distemper outbreak, they had to shut down their shelter. That doesn't mean the shelter did anything bad. When you have a high concentration of animals in a small little place like that, you're bound to have some issues. Even if you have the very best cleaning protocols on the planet, nature finds a way sometimes, So, but if we see distemper, we have to treat it accordingly, which is why we do a preventative vaccine for it. Okay, you're generally going to see distemper in puppies because if puppies get stressed, the things that they're exposed to come out because their immune system gets depressed. Okay, it can also be transferred mother to puppy. So we have to be careful with these things, all right, which is why the adult vaccines are always very, very important as that animal goes through life. Okay. Adenovirus 2 is spread through urine, feces, and saliva, and a little bit of nasal discharge. For parainfluenza, which causes kennel cough on the viral level, and you're going to see later on it's also caused on a bacterial level, okay? But kennel cough is what people commonly see. So let's say you take your dog to doggy daycare, and he's coming home, and a couple days later, he's got this dry, hacking cough, and it just hurts you to your bone when you hear it because it's just so rough, and it just sounds like it hurts. That's kennel cough, okay? And that is because of either this viral infection or the bacterial infection, one or the other, easily treatable with some antibiotics, and it can also resolve itself on its own, okay? With parvovirus, parvo is probably one of the most well-known diseases in dogs. It mostly will affect puppies and young adults. And if a dog gets parvo, now with our treatment protocols we have now, we have a higher save rate than we did back, say, in the 90s. But if the dog gets a bad enough case of parvo, unfortunately, you'll know within 3 to 5 days whether that poor little guy is going to make it or not. And it's very sad to watch, which is why it's so important to vaccinate against it, because it's completely 100% preventable. Okay. With parvo, that can be transferred through fomite contact. So let's say I touch this and I set it down. And she comes up and she picks this up and sets it down. What I just put on there, she just got. That is fomite transmission. It happens on your clothes, can happen on tables, countertops, in the grass that you're walking through, anywhere. Okay? So it's important to make sure that if you do think your pet has parvo, that you take the appropriate necessary steps that your vet requires that you do. Okay? Any unvaccinated dog or cat can get any of these diseases. And you will have people that will come say, hey, my dog was fine. I had it an entire life, never had a vaccine, perfectly healthy. That's amazing. And you're very lucky, because we don't always get that. Okay? When we talk about optional vaccines, I covered lepto a little bit. So leptospirosis is a disease they can get from drinking out of stagnant ponds, creeks, lakes, rivers. If it's fast-moving water, not usually, but if you have a slower-moving section, you could potentially get a lepto from that. Okay, so that was the L in the DA2PPL. Okay. Bordetella. Bordetella is the bacterial side of kennel cough infection. And so when we do vaccines for dogs, you'll see your vet shoot something up the dog's nose. That's a Bordetella vaccine. It just needs to hit the mucous membranes. It would be great. There is an injectable one. It doesn't have the efficacy rate as the nasal one, but it is there in case we need it. Always follow the advice of your vet. I'll say that a few more times in this presentation, because that is what you need to do. All right, cat vaccines. So cat vaccines, we have FVRCP. So the FVR stands for feline rhinotracheitis. Rhino is nose, trache is trachea, itis is inflammation of. Okay. It is a herpes-based virus. It is spread through direct contact, much like fomite processes. And when we have cats in a larger concentration, so you're thinking cat colonies, you're thinking animal shelters, you're thinking rescues, hoarding houses, people that just have an excessive amount of cats but maybe don't qualify as a hoarding house, you know, those guys are at a higher risk of getting rhinotracheitis because of stress. Every animal that experiences stress experiences that immunosuppression process much like we do as humans. Okay, so it's very important to understand that. When we're looking at calicivirus, some people pronounce it calicivirus. You may hear some other pronunciations. Some people will tell you my pronunciation is wrong. Just smile and nod and keep going with it. Okay. That is spread through saliva, eyes, and nose secretions. Okay. The difference between calicivirus and rhinotracheitis is very simple. The symptoms are all the same, except for with calicivirus, we see sores in the mouth. And so that's an easy way to find out if it's one or the other. Okay. And then sometimes with calici, we do a little pain management treatment and things like that, depending on how severe it can be. Most cats that get both of these get through it, antibiotic treatment, life's great. Okay. Panleukopenia. Panleukopenia is very similar to parvovirus. And there's some research that shows that panleukopenia was where parvovirus came from. So that's a cross-species jump, which unfortunately we know very well nowadays what that looks like. But panleuk is everywhere in our environment. It mostly affects kittens and young adults. And if a cat gets panleuk, They may or may not transmit it to the cats around them. Okay, I've seen mom and babies. One kitten gets pan-luke and passes away. The others never get sick. No rhyme or reason. It is what it is. So just because we see pan-luke doesn't mean it's a death sentence, but it is something we can prevent through vaccines. Okay, any cat can get pan-luke. My 6-year-old 3-legged cat at home, if I stick her out in the backyard, she could probably get pan-luke if she was not vaccinated. I'm not putting her out in the backyard. She doesn't have much motor skills. All right. So the AVMA recommends a 3-series shot for dogs and cats. Ideally, we start those vaccines at 8 weeks of age. The reason we start them at 8 weeks of age is because up until that point, the mother's antibodies have been keeping that kitten or puppy healthy. Where the gray area comes in with that is you will have some breeders that will vaccinate at 6 weeks of age and say that puppy's fully vaccinated. Now, in my many, many years of working in animal welfare and veterinary medicine, I can't tell you how many breeders I've come across that will tell you that one vaccine and that puppy and cat is vaccinated. It's not the case. So what I always like to tell people is if you got a dog or a cat from a breeder and they vaccinated that animal at less than 8 weeks, consider that a blessing and a boost, and let's start anew. Okay. Most vets that I've ever worked with have been that same thought process. Okay. So we start generally at 8 weeks of age, we give the first vaccine. And then 16, and then 12, and then 16. Okay. So that way we can build that immune system so that our pets can be as healthy as humanly possible. We're doing our very best for them. Then we do an annual vaccine every year. Now, you are going to have some veterinarians that are going to do a 3-year vaccine, sometimes for the DA2PP and rabies. And that's okay. Follow what they want you to do. Now, where the 3-year rabies kind of gets a little grayer again is if the licensing municipality you're in does not recognize a 3-year rabies, or will recognize it until you miss a vaccine and you got to revert back to a 1-year and then to a 3-year after that. Okay, so make sure you understand those processes within the places you live and you'll be fine. Okay. Just like cats, any unvaccinated dog, just like dogs, any unvaccinated cat can get these diseases. Now, let's say you find a 1-year-old Queensland. Take it to your vet, and you're like, I don't know the vaccine history of this animal. I found it running down the street. It's really cute. I played ball with it over in the park. I'm keeping it. It's mine. All right. And let's assume there's no microchip and no license. Okay. So your vet may recommend one vaccine and call it good, or your vet may recommend one vaccine and then do another one in 3 to 4 weeks and then call it good for a year. And that varies by vet. Okay, there's a lot of factors that go into that. Let's say they did blood work. Let's say they did physical exam. Let's say the animal's presenting 100% healthy. They might just go with one vaccine and move forward. Okay, so it really just depends on what they want to do. Again, follow the advice of your licensed veterinarian, not Dr. Google. All right, rabies. Rabies is the big scary thing in many communities because it is something we can get as human beings, which is why we have laws to control the spread of rabies. It is a virus, and much like any virus that we may get, there is no treatment. And if you get it, you might live. Depends on when you catch it, depends on when you get pre-exposure prophylaxis. Many different factors there. It's easier to vaccinate your dog than go through that process. Okay. You get it through bites. So let's say I get bit by a dog here, breaks the skin, unknown rabies vaccine, then that dog goes into quarantine for 10 days. If it doesn't show any signs of rabies, great, I'm okay, other than a hole in my hand. Now, if it bites me and the teeth just scrape along, but that scrape actually breaks the skin, you could potentially still have an exposure because it only takes a little bit of saliva to touch your blood to have an exposure. Okay? With the vaccine, it is required in Clark County, as with many municipalities. Okay? And dogs and cats 6 months or older in Clark County have to get it. Now, some municipalities require it at 4 months. Just depends on how their laws are set up. So if you moved here and previously you gave it at 4 months, that's fine. That's the law where you lived. And it has to be given by a licensed veterinarian. This is not something you can go down to Target or CVS or the local feed store to buy. You can buy the distemper vaccine, but not this one. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. All right, licensing your pet. Now, licensing your pet is something that many municipalities require, many counties require, and it's an important part of owning your pet. Now, the biggest benefit for licensing your pet is proof of ownership. Okay, this tells our officers, oh, this pet is licensed, I can get it home without it actually having to go to a shelter, if we can get in touch with you. Okay. Now, if your pet gets out, it's running stray, has a license, we can't get in touch with you, it is going to the shelter. But ideally, we would like to get it home as opposed to that process. All right. And it also supports what we do in animal control. So it supports our animal cruelty investigations. Last year, we did 744 cruelty investigations. Now, when you think about our department, we have 5 officers that cover the entirety of Clark County. And you look at these numbers on this slide, that's a lot of calls, a lot of movement. And this is what your licensing supports. It supports you having a safer county. It supports you being able to walk your dog on a leash, and the potential of another dog coming to attack it because it's running at large is small. Okay. When we're looking at animal distress calls, we had 300 last year. That could be any number of things. It could be an animal locked in a car on a hot day. It could be an animal locked in a car on a really, really cold day. And everything in between. For our dangerous dogs, our bites, our vicious animals, we have 873 calls last year for that. That is part of what keeps your community safe, is identifying the animals that fit in that category so that you can walk your dog, so you can walk to the park with your kids, so you can be at the park with your kids and know that it's safe. So that your kids can walk home from school in their safety. You might think that your licensing doesn't do anything to support the community you live in, but every single license supports keeping you safe and your kids safe. Now, livestock and wildlife. We get a lot of calls about cows that are out, goats that are out, sheep that are out, turkeys that are running loose, ducks that are running loose, rabbits that are running loose. Somebody's got to respond, right? So we do. And sometimes it's fun when you got a bunch of turkeys running around and you're getting some video of that and they're all talking to you, and that's kind of fun and exciting, right? But sometimes it's not fun because we also respond to deer that have been hit by a car. And that becomes a safety issue, not only for that animal, but it becomes a compassionate process, because we have to go pick up that deer, take it somewhere, and have it humanely euthanized so it does not suffer. And it takes 3 of our officers to do that, because deer are not light. They are very heavy. And when you have an injured animal, that makes it even more dangerous, even though you may not look at a deer as dangerous. But when you have an injured animal that feels like its life is on the line, they can do many, many things. Okay? So your licensing supports that process. Okay? And then we have confined animals. You know, I found this dog, it's in my yard, can you come pick it up? Simple things like that. You know, people get evicted from a house or an apartment, and we have to go in and take those animals out of there. That's a confined animal. You know, and hopefully those situations, those animals can get back to their owners, because ideally that's the best place for them. But choices have to be made sometimes. And then there's public education. So this is a form of public education that we do. Okay? But also, you know, we try and have information at different events. Like we're going to do an information table at the walk that Humane Society does every year. And it's little things like that. But also public education involves the officers that are out in the community, helping the people that are out in the community, helping the people that are houseless with pets, educating them on what's best for their pet, educating them on standards of care, what meets the letter of the law. It's me walking through a grocery store and somebody knowing I work for animal protection and control and asking me questions. You know, it's as simple as that. But even though I'm not officially educating somebody in that scenario, it is an education process. Okay? It's the people I meet at the dog park when I'm down there just hanging out with them and talking to them. And I'm educating them on behavior issues their animals are having in the dog park, or I'm just talking to them about, you know, food and things like that, or vaccines, or whatever that might be. It's an education process. And that's what we do. And then we assist owners with help. So every time we go into an investigation with an animal, let's call it a cruelty and neglect investigation, and we find out that it's really not cruelty and neglect, it's somebody that's in over their head and they need just a little bit of help to get to a better place. Our goal is to not to go in and take all those animals out. Our goal is to go in and help keep those animals in a home where they're loved and they're cared for. And people get in over their heads sometimes, you know? And so we give them a little help. We work with our partners in the community to find spay-neuter resources, to find medical care, to find food, you know, pet food bank, things like that. Okay? All of that is dependent on what our partners can help with. There's no mile-long deep of money pit that we can just pull money out of and do all kinds of crazy things with. I mean, I would love that, but I haven't won the lottery yet. So we have to be discerning on how we approach those people. And sometimes people have to give a little to get a little. You know, we need people to step up and say, yes, I can do this, and show us that they want to do it. And then we can provide some help later, you know. And then patrolling our parks and schools. You know, some people might see that as, that's just you driving by. But really what that means is we are driving by to make sure your kids are safe in their schoolyard. Because if you drive by a schoolyard on a Saturday like I do, and you see Bob and Cindy out there throwing ball with their golden retriever, you know, and then you drive by at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon and you still see Bob and Cindy out there throwing ball with their retriever. Your kids don't know if that dog is nice and friendly. You know, I don't know if that dog is nice and friendly. You might say it won't bite you, but in my experience, if an owner says, oh, my dog won't bite, it'll be fine, it's not quite the case. And you've got too many environmental factors to say, is that dog going to recall when you need it to? You know, so that's why we have things like leash laws. You know, even in an open schoolyard, your animal's required to be on a leash. The only place it's not required to be on a leash is in your property. If you're walking it on the street, put it on a leash. Okay? So we patrol these schools for that reason. Now we also patrol the parks for the same reason. I can go to Dakota Dog Park and be there talking to people, having a good old time. You got dogs running around having the very best life that they're living. And just over the fence in a little clearing, I see dogs running free in an unfenced area. And you could probably find this at any park, any dog park, any big grassy field. But the law is pretty clear. You gotta have your dog on a leash. It is a safety issue, which is why our officers patrol these places. So when they stop you and say, hey, you want to put Fido on a leash, don't get upset with them. The law is the law. It's no different than speeding past the school at 90 miles an hour. Same law, same type of situation. Safe. That's what we want. We want you to be safe. We want your pets to be safe. Because if your dog is off a leash and something spooks it and it runs out in the street and gets hit by a car, now you have to deal with that. And your pet has to go through that pain and suffering. Nobody wants that. So it's real simple. A leash. Now, the final reason you should license your pet, it is required by law. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no, I don't want to do it today. There's no, I don't care. It's the law. And we all have to follow it. My 3-legged cat at home who will never walk outside has to be licensed. That cute little chihuahua in the purse that you see people walking around at the store with, that dog has to be licensed. Now, that dog may never touch the ground, but you still have to license it. Okay? So, if you have a dog or a cat, 6 months or older, you do need to license that. In Clark County, we also require veterinarians that give rabies vaccines to give us that information. So you may get something from us that says, hey, your dog needs to be licensed or your cat needs to be licensed. It didn't just fall out of the sky. It's because we got the information from your vet. That is also the law. So they're not sharing anything they shouldn't be sharing. They're just sharing the basic information to license your pet. Nothing more. Now, how do you license your pet? We have all kinds of ways for you to license your pet. The easiest way to license your pet is online. We have a new software system that we just rolled out, and it's still a little bumpy, I'm going to be honest with you. We have some bumps and bruises happening, but we'll get through it. But we do encourage you to try it, okay? You can go in person, and you can do it by mail. Mail is going to be your very slowest process. So if you got all day and then a couple, that's fine. All of this information can be found at our website at clark.wa.gov/pets. Now, let's say you already have a pet that is licensed. And you're like, I don't know how to renew my license. You got a new system. So I'm going to walk you through that real quick. Just real quick. So you're going to go to that website. You're going to select pet licensing. You're going to do, can I renew my pet online? Then you're going to get this screen right here. Now, a lot of people look at this screen and they just kind of go blank. You're just going to go to first time user. If you've never logged into the new system, just go to first time user. Okay? Much easier that way. Now, when you go to first time user, you're going to get this screen here. You're going to go right at the bottom there where it says email. And you want to think long and hard about the email you used when you created your account in our previous system. Now, if you're like me, you got like 6 or 10 email addresses, and you're like, oh God, which one did I use? I don't even know. Try them all. One of them will hit. Okay? Now, once you find the email that works, you're going to get this little note at the bottom. It says your account number has been sent. Now, in your email, You're going to get that one there, right at the top. It's going to give you your account number and a link to click. Write down that account number. Remember it. Whatever works for your brain, do it. Click on the link given. Fill out the information appropriate. And then you're going to get your profile. Make sure your information on your profile is up to date. Okay? Phone number, email address, address, all of it. Okay? Then, if you were able to scroll here, which you can't, you'll see where it says next. You just click next, and then you'll get the pet profile, the pet licensing profile. Now, obviously in my test account, there are no animals attached to it, but if there were, you would see them there, and then you can do your processes to renew your licensing. A few reminders. Vaccinate your pet. Give it the appropriate annual vaccine. Get it a rabies vaccine. Okay? And any optional vaccines, I highly recommend. Okay? Establish a relationship with your veterinarian. Find a vet you like and stick with them. That is going to serve you in the lifetime that you own your pet. Them knowing the health history of your pet as that pet ages is going to be invaluable information for them. It's going to give your pet a better quality of life as it moves forward. License your pet. Remember, it's the law. Remember, it's easier for us to get your pet home if you license it. It also supports the work we do in the community, which makes your community safer, which makes us all safer. Microchip your pets. Now, you might say, why do I need a license if I can just microchip my pet and get my pet home? A microchip is just one more way to say this pet belongs to somebody. I can't tell you how many microchips I have run in my career that have nothing attached to them. It is a dead-end chip. So if your pet has a microchip, please register that chip and make sure it stays that way. If you move, change your registration. Just like with your license information, it always should be updated, okay? And then spay and neuter your pets. Now, I know that we have limited resources in our county, in our area, this part of Southwest Washington, but there are resources out there. I encourage you to find them. On our website, there are some resources listed, so those can help you out. The biggest resource in the county is Humane Society, so reach out to them if you need help with spay and neuter. Okay? And then my final reminder is summer is coming. It is going to get a little bit warm. Please be aware of how hot your car can get during that time. If your dog is out in your car today, it's going to be fine. But when it's 80 degrees out, it can easily get up to 120 in your car very quickly. And some cars, when they idle with the air conditioning running, it actually stops working and starts blowing hot air. So make sure your car is not in that category, because that's where my car is. So, unless you've got one of those fancy cars that has a way to keep it all cold, it's best to just not keep your pet in a car when it's hot. So, I'm going to get off this soapbox. If you have any comments and questions, I'll be glad to take them.
I have a question. So there seem to be a lot of stray cats around my house. What is the best thing I can do for those cats and the health of, like you're saying that the stray cats might be able to bring in, even into my yard, the diseases where my cat is. So, should I not be feeding them? What are the best things I can do for their health and the health of my pet?
Okay. So when you're dealing with community cats, so this is what we're going to call community cats. It's the most common terminology used. A lot of people will refer to them as feral cats. Feral is actually behavior as opposed to really what these guys are. Community cat is a better terminology because it encompasses the ones that are truly feral in behavior, but also the ones that are friendly, that'll come up and rub against your leg and that kind of fun thing. Now, the best thing you can do for that type of colony situation, which could be as simple as 2 cats, or you could have 50, whatever the number is. Okay. First thing you need to know is there's no special, wonderful, God-given place that these cats can go. Some of these cats, you can turn them into a shelter, and they are never, ever going to be adoptable. So the best plan of action is to do TNR, so trap, neuter, and return. You want to make sure that when they get TNR, they get vaccinated for VRCP and rabies. And then if you can get them a little bit of flea and tick treatment at that point in time, do it. Sometimes you only have one chance with each cat. So the best you can do for them is what you want to do. So TNR resources are not as robust in our community as other communities. Across the river, they've got some amazing TNR resources over there. We're not quite there yet. It'll be slow steps to get there, but there are places that will do TNR. The Humane Society does some TNR. And then you can reach out to Feral Cat Coalition across the river there in Portland, and they can give you some resources or maybe even help you. I don't know what their policies and procedures are. I can't speak for them, but I do know a lot of community members have reached out to them. Okay. And then if you're just going to use your local vet as your TNR clinic, you can rent traps at feed stores. You can buy traps at feed stores. You can buy them online. I have a preference for the types of traps that used because they're easier to use in the medical side. And having been on that side and worked on that side, there are some traps that are a little more difficult. So if you go to the feed store and you get a trap that's called Have a Heart, it's got a big metal door right at the front, those are a little more difficult for your medical people to deal with. So look for other traps that are a little bit easier to deal with. If that is your only option, that is your only option, and that is okay. Okay. But I'm just trying to give them a little advocacy on their side also. But TNR is your best bet with that. Mm-hmm.
Hi. This might be a silly question, but when we had COVID, we heard on the news that animals had COVID and were given it to their masters or their home. Is that true?
There were some cases where some animals did get COVID, but it wasn't as widespread as people were thinking. So it was very minimal.
And then I have one more question.
And there was, as far as I know, there was never a known transmission between cat and human. But there was positive cats with COVID.
And then does Clark County Animal Control, they also do within the cities, or is just unincorporated Clark County?
So we cover unincorporated Clark County and then the city of Vancouver and Yakult. We do not cover the other incorporated cities within the area. If you go and try and license on our new system and you put in an address that is not within our jurisdiction, it will give you a link to the jurisdiction it's for. So we try to eliminate that process. It is very confusing for a lot of people on what we cover, what we don't cover, and that's something we're working on to help explain better for people and give them the tools necessary to understand it deeper.
For the licensing of the pet, how often do you have to renew that license? And how much is the fee, if there is a fee?
It's annual renewal on your licensing, and then the fees vary by animal type, if you're a senior, if it's a service pet, things like that, and all that's listed on our website.
It's also a discount if they're neutered or spayed, right?
Yes, there is a discount for spay and neuter.
Are there any additional types of preventative care that you would recommend for either first-time pet owners or owners with very young animals?
I would say I wouldn't put training in preventative care necessarily, but I think it bridges to it. If you have a puppy or a young adult animal, dog specifically, that you just got, I would definitely look into some training options, where your dog can become a better community member. I've got friends whose dogs will jump all over me when I go visit them, and which, I personally don't mind. But if they jumped on somebody else, they might be like, oh, I don't like that. So it's best to give your dog a little bit of training so they can be just a better community member. I think that's important. As far as cats, you can train your cat if you want to. They may not listen. You might just get the look, and that's about it. Any further questions? All right. You are welcome to reach out to me at any point. And if you're watching this online, feel free to call us at the department, and I'll be glad to talk to you. You can email me, whatever you need to. I appreciate your time.